Hello everyone, today, after a very long time, we are finally reviewing Stereo Mind Game by Daughter. I haven't reviewed an album for a very long time. It's been like 4 or 5 months at this point since I've made a review of anything. And the last thing I did was reviewing Boy Genius and 100 Gex and Caroline Polachek like 4 months ago, and that's about it. You know, I never reviewed the new Daughter album, Stereo Mind Game, and I thought, okay, today is finally the day where I'm doing that. The album has been one of my favorites from this year. It's not at the same level of like a Boy Genius or a Rosie Plain, but it's really good, and I consider it to be like hugely unappreciated by people. So, because of that, I will be sharing my own thoughts and doing a track-by-track review of the new Daughter album. So let's get into it. So for a short introduction, Daughter is a London-based band that formed back in 2010 or 2011, and with Elena Tonra being sort of like the main face of the band, being also the singer, the songwriter, and the lead guitarist as well. Their music was characterized for being like really melancholic and atmospheric, and sort of making their way to the Life is Strange video game, which definitely gained a lot of traction. But before that, Daughter had already gained a lot of popularity in other circles with their debut EP called His Young Heart, one of my favorite EPs ever. That was followed by another EP in 2012 called The Wild Youth, and those releases sort of showcased their signature style that gained not only a lot of popularity, but a very dedicated fan base. So in 2013, literally just like a year later after that, Daughter released their debut album, which was called If You Leave. And the album included tracks like Youth and Smother, which are considered some of the most like favorite and well-known songs of the band itself. So yeah, if I consider my favorite songs of Daughter, I will go ahead and name songs like Candles, maybe Landfill, and The Right Way Around. Those are my top 3 definitely. But anyways, unfortunately Daughter announced their sort of like decision to go on an indefinite hiatus back in January in 2017, and since then Elena Tonra sort of continued making music on her own, sort of like a solo artist in projects like X-Ray. You can listen to that, it's really great. But now, finally, in 2023, the band has reunited again. Well, not reunited, they just took like a weird break, you know, it's not like they separated or anything. And they've decided to come together and release a new album. Well, it's not so new, it came out like 4 months ago, but you get it. And that new album is called Stereo Mind Game. This album consists of 12 tracks. The first one being called Intro, which is just an instrumental introduction to the record. It's just like 30 seconds long or something. Sort of a very short and theatrical opening to the album. Not much to critique or say or anything. It's just like trying to make an opinion about a DVD menu by Phoebe Bridgers. It's just not gonna happen, right? It's just an intro. It's a good intro, but to be fair, it's kind of hard to make a bad intro. So yeah, the first real track of this album though is called Be On Your Way, which is actually a single. It was the first single that came out, and it instantly became one of my favorite Daughter songs of all time. You know, it's very reminiscent to their previous work, you know, with the very sweet drums and like soothing vocals and beautiful violins. It's just like classic Daughter, and you know, but it has more of a theatrical and even more electronic style than their previous works, you know. It has like a really great climax as well. It's just the perfect way to start the record. The second track is called Party, also released as a single, and I consider it to be my favorite song of this album. It was the second one that came out, and in here the drums are louder than before, and the guitar is just extremely nostalgic. It takes you straight to like Life is Strange before the storm times. It's just groovy and it's dark, as it's often expected from a Daughter song, and the chorus is just insanely catchy. Everything about it just screams fear and loneliness and missing memories and lost friends. Not forgetting my favorite lyrics, the worst night of my life, or even worse, the best. The next song of this album is called Dandelion. This is the first track that is not a single, and the first time I listened to this album I couldn't believe how good the song was. It just felt like the album was getting better and better, and it's clearly a more exciting and bombastic approach. It feels more connected to like indie pop, but the guitar and the string pattern and the calculated drums and that like electric guitar sort of makes the song tilt towards more of like an indie rock, like folk rock classic melody, with like an outro being like a full minute long, which is always necessary in a Daughter album. So yeah, I love the track, and so far everything from this album has been perfect in my opinion. Then we jump straight to Neptune, a 5-minute song, by far one of the longest, if not the longest track of the album. It is clearly slower than the rest. I guess we need a break from those previous songs, which have clearly been more rhythmic and explorative. But here in Neptune, we jump straight back to basics, with a very clear and fine instrumentals that give priority to lyrics and the vocals, basically. Reminding me of some old-time Mitski. Backup male singers join in, the sound gets louder and louder, and a huge choir starts to like unravel. You know, a tragic chorus, dark melody, and almost like toxic. So yeah, I love slow burn, and this is as a slow burn as it gets. The next song of this album is called Swim Back, which is the third and last single of this album, although I didn't listen to it when it came out, just when the album actually came out. In here, the band gave priority to the drums, which definitely distorts the whole song in its entirety. There isn't a room for much. The track sustains itself with a very expected style and like formulaic resolution. It's not a bad track, but the instrumentals don't really reach that like level of nuance and originality that I expect from a Daughter song. So yeah. The 7th track of the album, or 6th one if we don't count the intro, is called Junkmail, which just becomes louder and louder as the song progresses. Very cryptic lyrics, sort of like infected almost, in a good way. Very open lyrics, which I like, and it's very common from Daughter, and a very restless and repetitive guitar, which goes throughout the whole song unbothered. Not changing for a single second really, as this song sort of like, it's not as structured as the rest songs, it's more of an open and linear story. So despite the instrumentals being like the same throughout the whole song, the lyrics are not repeated much, which is pretty interesting. Future Lover is the next song of this record, which starts with a completely unexpected style. It has some echoey drums and like a very weird guitar that I'm not even sure if it's a guitar, but it's a style that hasn't been quite explored from Daughter until now. By that sense, I don't think the song feels consistent. Sort of like SZA and Phoebe Bridgers in Ghost in the Machine. I still got mixed feelings about that one, but it almost feels like you're hearing two songs at the same time. And I don't mean that in a bad way in this case. I actually find it refreshing, you know? We know how consistent Daughter have been with their previous projects and, you know, with their brand and their style and sound. So it's always good to escape that and find more explorative and experimental routes to make a record. Then we jump to Missed Calls. It's a 2-minute interlude with voices in the background and like a very particular sort of sound. Very reminiscent to like the last Bon Iver record, I, which I love. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's just always good to see a record sort of split in half as a way of sort of reset your sound in your mind and, you know, the melodies, and sort of like starting over again. Albums like this can be one of two things. They're either tiring because of the repetitive style, or they're a beautiful, consistent experience meant to be heard all at once from top to bottom. The next song, Isolation, is also a very short one, not even hitting a 3-minute mark, and while previous tracks have like a beginning very different from the end, sort of being more theatrical, in here we start to get songs that feel like more like little tiny worlds. We lost the theatrics and the loudness of these songs, and we tried to settle into some short and particular moments, which make the songs as an individual feel kind of forgettable, but in some ways makes the album feel more adventurous and interesting. We only have 2 more songs until this album ends, and in here we have a song called To Rage. We finally go back to that classic 5-minute song we want from Daughter, as you can allow yourself to lay down and listen to it for like 5 minutes and drift away with the song. It is still quite grounded. It isn't as theatrical and bombastic as the first tracks, but it's also not as quiet and repetitive as the last songs. It's sort of in between, and that in between is what I call the classic well-known daughter of 2013, vintage style. The last song of this album, finally, is called Wish I Could Cross the Sea. It's just full of dark references and very depressing metaphors. It is still slightly underwhelming, and that's just because of the fact that, the constant repetitiveness of the songs start to leave a mark at the end of this album. And the open lyrics and the soothing violin just turns into a cheap staple of this album. That was exciting at first, but it quickly gets old. The style is actually really good if you're in the mood for it. So I do find some appreciation for that. I guess there are albums that you listen to for certain specific songs individually, and there are other albums that are meant to be listened from top to bottom, sort of like a complete experience with no skips. Stereo Mind Game offers the best of both worlds. It has really great singles and also is a really great album on its own, making the experience just so much better. Even if I didn't like every single song from here, I enjoyed the complete experience, definitely. Most of all because I've missed this band for a very long time. And for that reason, so I'm giving this record a 3 stars out of 5. Even if it well reaches my expectations, it didn't really reach that level of surprise or greatness that an album like this can achieve. But anyways, that's basically it. If you haven't heard the Stereo Mind Game, I recommend you to listen to it and form your own opinion. And you can always leave a comment about your thoughts on this album, without forgetting that this is just my opinion. I'm not objective at all, man. So anyways, if you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel, maybe leave a like, leave a comment, and I hope we can keep in touch. Goodbye.
Ready for the mosh pit, Shaka Bra.